Picture the scene. It is January 11, 2026.
Right.
The night sky over Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, is just electric. Like the air in the King Abdullah Sports City Stadium is thick.
Oh, yeah. Super heavy with humidity over there.
Exactly. Heavy with humidity, and the noise is absolutely deafening. You are watching the Supercopa de España final. It's the ultimate rivalry in global sports, right? Real Madrid versus Barcelona.
Doesn't get bigger.
It really doesn't. You look at the scoreboard and it reads Barcelona 3, Real Madrid 2. The referee blows the final whistle. And in that exact moment, and this is wild, a television camera pans over to Kylian Mbappé.
Oh, this clip. Yeah.
Yeah, you know the one. This is a player Real Madrid spent, north of 200 million euros to bring to the club?
Easily, yeah, when you factor everything in.
Right. He is the crown jewel, like the ultimate prize. And as his manager, Xabi Alonso, walks over, extending a hand, trying to direct his team to go congratulate Barcelona.
Just doing the normal managerial stuff.
Exactly. And Mbappé walks right past him.
Unbelievable.
He doesn't look at him. He doesn't nod. He doesn't even acknowledge the man's physical existence on the planet.
It's just cold. It's so cold.
And obviously the clip hits the internet and goes instantly viral. We are talking 50 million views before the stadium even empties out.
Yeah, the internet lost its mind.
Completely. And then, less than 24 hours later, Xabi Alonso, the tactical genius who went utterly unbeaten in the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen, is fired.
Just gone.
Sacked. Unceremoniously shown the door.
It is an incredibly jarring visual, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch that footage, you're not just watching a frustrated player after a loss.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Oh, for sure. You are watching a public execution of managerial authority. I mean, to go from being the untouchable, invincible mastermind in Germany to being dismissed in the desert in less than a year. It's a spectacular fall from grace.
It really is. So welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are looking at a massive stack of verified reports. I'm talking about dispatches from ESPN, The Athletic, Fabrizio Romano, Al Jazeera, Sky Sports.
That's local stuff too, right?
Yeah. Deep-cut local Spanish outlets like Marca and Defensa Central. When I first looked at this dossier, I honestly had to reread the timeline 3 times.
Because it just doesn't seem real.
Exactly. It didn't seem mathematically possible to fire this many managers this quickly. So the mission for you, listening right now, is to understand the absolute most dramatic managerial crisis in modern global football.
It's a total meltdown.
We are dissecting a Real Madrid team that has cycled through 3 different managers in a single calendar year. They're staring down the barrel of back-to-back trophyless seasons.
Which is, frankly, virtually unthinkable for this institution.
Totally. And they're sitting on a tactical puzzle that costs hundreds of millions of euros and seems, entirely fundamentally unsolvable.
It truly is a masterclass in organizational chaos. What we're looking at in this dossier isn't just a string of bad luck.
Or a few bad bounces of the ball, yeah.
Right. It is a structural collapse at the highest possible level of the sport. We are basically looking at what happens when the commercial desire to accumulate superstars, violently collides with the reality of building a functioning sporting ecosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly grasp the sheer scale of this chaos, we have to establish the baseline. We have to look at the timeline.
Good idea.
And by the time we finish this conversation, you're going to understand exactly why the most coveted, glamorous job in world sports is currently looking like a radioactive poison chalice. So let's rewind the clock. We are just going back 12 months, May 2025.
That is the big inflection point.
Mm-hmm.
May 2025 is when the legendary Carlo Ancelotti leaves the club by mutual consent.
Yeah.
And we really have to pause and understand what Ancelotti meant to this ecosystem. Ancelotti is practically a deity in Madrid.
Oh, yeah, loved by everybody.
Exactly. Across 2 different spells managing the club, he won 15 trophies. His second spell alone lasted 4 years.
Which is crazy for Madrid.
It's practically an eternity.
Yeah.
In the pressure cooker of Real Madrid, where managers are often fired after a single bad month, 4 years is unheard of. He brought a sense of calm. He was the ultimate man manager, the guy who could manage the massive egos in that dressing room with just like a raised eyebrow and a calm demeanor.
He was the ultimate vibes manager, right?
Yeah, exactly. Vibes.
The players loved him. He gave them freedom. He didn't micromanage their every footstep. But when he leaves, the club decides to go in a completely different direction. They bring in Xabi Alonso.
Which at the time seemed like a massive coup. I mean, Alonso played for Madrid. He understands the intense media culture of a Spanish capital.
Their pressure.
Right. And he was coming off that historic, undefeated Bundesliga season with Leverkusen.
Mm-hmm.
But From a tactical standpoint, this is a massive philosophical shift.
Night and day.
Literally. Alonso is a modern, highly structured, pressing-heavy manager. His system in Germany relied on meticulous choreography. Every single player had to be in a specific zone, pressing at specific triggers.
And how did that rigid choreographed system mesh with a locker room of Galacticos, who were used to Ancelotti basically letting them play off instinct?
It was oil and water. I mean, the dossier details how the friction started almost immediately.
I bet.
You're asking a group of incredibly wealthy, highly decorated superstars who are used to improvising to suddenly act as cogs in a complex, high-intensity machine. And the breaking point came incredibly fast. Alonso lasted exactly 233 days.
233 days. That is staggering. A manager who is universally considered like the most sought-after tactical mind in Europe couldn't even survive a standard school year in Madrid.
The nature of his exit is what really highlights the toxicity, though. Following that Supercopa loss in Jeddah, the one where Mbappé ignored him.
Right, the viral clip.
Yeah, Alonso faced the press. He sat down at the microphone and said, quote, "We have to move on as soon as possible."
Oh, wow.
And he was unknowingly predicting his own demise because Real Madrid moved on from him within 24 hours.
That's brutal.
They didn't even wait for the team plane to land back in Spain to finalize the decision.
So Alonso is the victim of a culture clash. The rigid tactician gets chewed up by the superstar egos. But if Alonso's highly structured system caused a mutiny, you would think the board would recognize the error, right?
You would hope so.
You'd think they'd pivot and bring in another veteran man-manager like Ancelotti to calm the waters. But instead, they panicked in a way that just defies logical corporate governance.
They absolutely panicked because sacking a manager mid-season creates an immediate vacuum. So on January 13th, 2026, Real Madrid promoted Álvaro Arbeloa to the head coaching role.
Ah, yes.
Arbeloa was managing Castilla, which is Real Madrid's reserve team, their B team.
Which brings us to a stat in this dossier that actually made me laugh out loud when I read it. Before taking over the most expensive, high-pressure squad on Earth on January 13th, Álvaro Arbeloa had never not once managed a senior professional football team.
0 senior professional experience. None.
It's mind-boggling.
He had managed teenagers and academy prospects. And suddenly, he is walking into a locker room containing Kylian Mbappé, Vinícius Jr., and Jude Bellingham. The power dynamic is completely inverted.
Yeah, they're looking down on him.
Exactly. The players are looking at a manager who hasn't achieved a fraction of what they have in the game. And the results reflected that immediate lack of authority.
Oh, the results were a disaster.
We look at the verified timeline from Marca. His very first official match as Real Madrid manager was a Copa del Rey fixture.
Right.
And for those unfamiliar with the Spanish football structure, the Copa del Rey is their premier domestic cup competition, a knockout tournament. Real Madrid drew Albacete in the round of 32. Albacete is a second division side.
Okay, let's put that in context. You have a squad whose combined transfer fees and wages basically rival the GDP of a small island nation, playing against a team from the second tier of Spanish football.
Yeah.
A team that rides buses to away games instead of chartered jets. What happened?
Real Madrid lost 3-2.
Unbelievable.
2 days after Arbeloa is promoted to the top job, he is knocked out of a major cup competition by a team in the division below them. It immediately set a disastrous, humiliating tone for his tenure.
I mean, think about the psychology of that locker room. You are a squad of global megastars, multiple Ballon d'Or contenders, World Cup winners. You just essentially forced out one of the brightest young managers in the world because you didn't like his rules.
Right.
And your new boss, who has never managed a senior game, leads you into a loss against a second division team within 48 hours of taking the job. It's like taking over as CEO of a Fortune 500 company from a legendary founder, only to realize the board didn't actually want you, the employees make more money than you do, and they refuse to even open your emails.
That corporate analogy maps perfectly onto the football pitch. When the employees have more leverage and a higher profile than the management, the entire concept of accountability just evaporates.
That's gone.
And we saw the tension just continue to mount. Arbeloa's overall record in La Liga is incredibly telling. The dossier shows he secured 8 wins and suffered 7 losses across 22 league matches.
Wow.
For a mid-table club, that's a respectable run. For Real Madrid, losing 7 league games in a half season is a 4-alarm fire.
Yeah, the fans would be waving the white handkerchiefs in the stadium.
Oh, absolutely. And Arbeloa himself knew it. The pressure was clearly breaking him. By late April, speaking right before a match against Espanyol, he gave a quote to the press that strips away all the PR spin.
What did he say?
He said, quote, "The results are far from what Real Madrid should be. You can't beat anyone these days just by getting off the bus. We have to improve a lot."
Let's really look at that phrase. You can't beat anyone these days just by getting off the bus. That is such a loaded, explosive statement to make to the media.
Extremely loaded.
Because he is basically accusing this squad of unbelievable entitlement. He's telling the world that these players think their mere presence, like the prestige of the Real Madrid crest on their shirt, is enough to win football matches without actually putting in the physical effort.
It points directly to a fractured, toxic locker room culture. I mean, when a manager feels so helpless that he has to publicly, via the media, remind a 200 million euro squad that they actually have to run and sweat to win,
You've lost them.
you have completely lost the dressing room. And this underlying entitlement explains the wild inconsistency we saw play out in real time during the Champions League. Under Arbeloa, they looked dead and buried against Manchester City in the round of 16.
Oh, I remember that tie.
But somehow they pulled off a miraculous survival, eventually winning 5-1 on aggregate, meaning their combined goals over the two matches surpassed City's.
Right, which makes you think, okay, maybe they've turned a corner. Maybe the floodlights of the Champions League, the prestige of European nights has finally woken them up. Like maybe they realize they actually have to try.
But a team built on vibes and entitlement cannot sustain a tactical effort. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
In the quarterfinals, they faced Bayern Munich, and they are exposed. They are eliminated over two legs. Bayern won the second leg 4-3 at the Allianz Arena, taking the tie 6-4 on aggregate.
Yeah.
So despite a massive emotional performance against Man City, the foundational instability, the lack of tactical structure caught up with them. You simply cannot out-talent a well-organized team like Bayern Munich over 180 minutes.
And let's be absolutely clear about what that Bayern Munich exit means for the club's bottom line. Based on the data in this dossier, that quarterfinal exit confirms that Real Madrid will finish the 2025-2026 season without a Champions League trophy, without the La Liga title. They're hopelessly trailing Barcelona, without the Copa del Rey, and without the Supercopa.
Back-to-back trophyless seasons. Their last piece of silverware was the 2024-2025 La Liga title under Ancelotti.
Which feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does. A consecutive barren run of this magnitude has only happened a handful of times in the club's modern history. We are not talking about a slump here. It is a full-blown systemic failure of their sporting model.
So, we have the timeline. We know what happened. But we need to understand the mechanics of the collapse. Why did Alonso fail so spectacularly, so fast? And why is Arbeloa completely unable to get a tune out of these players?
Right.
It all comes down to a tactical nightmare that no one has been able to solve.
It is the absolute core of the crisis. And what makes it so fascinating is that it begins with a rigid mandate from the very top of the club's hierarchy.
The suits.
Exactly. According to extensive reporting from Diario AS by José Felix Diaz, Real Madrid have issued an internal directive for their managerial search. The next manager, whoever it is, must be capable of getting the best out of Kylian Mbappé, Jude Bellingham, and Vinícius Jr. simultaneously.
All on the pitch at the exact same time.
Exactly. Furthermore, the club has declared all three of these players untouchable in the recruitment process. They will not be sold to balance the books.
No way.
The club will not break up the trio to create a more balanced squad. The new managers simply have to make it work.
The untouchables. It sounds like a Hollywood movie, but for a football manager, it's actually a tactical prison sentence. Let's break down the mechanics of why this is such a disaster. Because if you're a casual fan, or even just someone looking at a spreadsheet, having Mbappé, Bellingham, and Vinícius on the same team sounds like a cheat code.
Oh, absolutely.
You should be winning every match 5-0.
Right. The accumulation of raw individual talent is breathtaking. But football is a game of space and geometry, played on grass, not on a spreadsheet.
Right.
Let's start with Kylian Mbappé. He arrived in the summer of 2024. This was a signing that cost north of 200 million euros when you factor in signing bonuses and wages. And if you only look at his individual statistics, everything looks fine. I mean, he has surpassed 40 goals in all competitions this season.
40 goals. If I hear a striker has 40 goals in a season, I automatically assume his team is flying and winning the league by 10 points.
But that is the trap of raw statistics in a team sport. Because how Mbappé is getting those goals is mathematically destroying the team's structural integrity. The dossier highlights a persistent tactical problem, Mbappé's positional freedom.
He just goes wherever he wants.
Exactly. He refuses to stay in one lane. He was nominally brought into play as a center forward, a striker. But his natural inclination, the way he played his entire career in Paris, is to drift from the wide left position into the center.
Okay, let's get into the geometry of this. Why does it matter where he roams if the ball ends up in the back of the net?
Because of the space he is consuming. And who else relies on that exact same space? In modern football, the most dangerous area on the pitch is often referred to as the half space, the vertical channel between the wide wing and the dead center of the pitch.
Okay.
When Mbappé drifts from the center forward position into that left half space, he drags the opposing center back and right back with him. He is effectively clogging the channel. Now, who is Real Madrid's other global superstar?
Vinícius Jr., the 2024 Ballon d'Or runner-up.
And where does Vinícius naturally play? He is a left winger whose entire game is built on cutting inside into that exact same left half space.
Ah, I see it now. They both want to occupy the exact same blade of grass.
Precisely. They're physically crashing into each other's operating zones. If Mbappé is occupying the left half space and Vinícius cuts inside into the left half space, the opposing defense doesn't have to stretch to cover them.
They just pack that one side.
Right. A single defensive block can neutralize two players worth 400 million euros. Mbappé's positional freedom is completely suffocating Vinícius' natural role. Vinícius has been visibly frustrated all season, constantly throwing his hands up when the space he wants to run into is already occupied by his own teammate.
Oh, you can see it on the broadcasts. He looks miserable.
In fact, his public complaints about being substituted by Xabi Alonso, who was trying to fix this imbalance by taking one of them off the pitch, were cited as a major contributing factor in Alonso's dismissal. The tactical incoherence is breeding massive resentment.
And the domino effect doesn't stop with Vinícius, because there's a third point to this triangle. What about Jude Bellingham?
Bellingham is the ultimate victim of this dysfunctional geometry. In his historic debut season in 2023-2024, Bellingham was a revelation playing as an attacking midfielder.
He was unbelievable.
He played with incredible vertical freedom, constantly making late, surging runs into the penalty box to score crucial goals. He was finding the gaps between defenders. But this season, what happens to those gaps?
They don't exist, because Mbappé and Vinícius have dragged all the defenders into the exact area Bellingham wants to run into.
Exactly. To accommodate Mbappé's roaming and Vinícius' presence on the left, the attacking third of the pitch is a traffic jam. So to even get a touch of the ball, Bellingham has been forced to drop into much deeper, more defensive midfield positions. He has to walk backward toward his own goal just to find open space.
They've basically turned a Ferrari into a tractor.
That's a great way to put it.
They're using one of the most dynamic, goal-scoring, attacking midfielders in the world to do the gritty, defensive, dirty work near the center circle, just so Mbappé has room to wander around up top.
That is exactly the mechanical flaw that the analysis from World Soccer Talk points out. Bellingham's box-to-box influence, his ability to win games single-handedly, has been severely diluted by his positional demotion. And interestingly, the data supports this perfectly.
How so?
His form for the England national team has remained significantly stronger than his club form, precisely because the England setup does not have Kylian Mbappé clogging the final third, allowing Bellingham that central freedom to attack the box.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. Real Madrid spent a fortune, literal hundreds of millions of euros, to bring Mbappé to Spain. It was a pursuit that lasted years.
Years and years.
And now, entering their third season with this core group, having cycled through Carlo Ancelotti, Xabi Alonso, and Álvaro Arbeloa, 3 different managers still don't know if Kylian Mbappé is a left winger or a center forward. They literally do not know how to categorize or tactically deploy their most expensive asset.
3 managers. 1 question. No answer. That is how the dossier frames the situation. It is the tactical mystery of the Mbappé-Vinícius-Bellingham triangle. And the boardroom's refusal to acknowledge the geometrical impossibility of the setup is what's destroying the managers.
Let me put you on the spot looking at all this tactical data. Is this fundamentally a coaching failure? Like, did Alonso and Arbeloa just lack the tactical imagination to solve a complex problem? Or is this an impossible roster-building failure by the front office?
It is overwhelmingly a roster-building failure. When you accumulate players based purely on their individual star power, their jersey sales, and their commercial value, rather than their tactical compatibility, you put the manager in an unwinnable situation.
Yeah, you can't just force pieces together.
You cannot play 3 instruments that demand the exact same frequency and expect a symphony. You're only going to create dissonance. No manager, no matter how brilliant, can change the physical dimensions of the pitch.
And what's wild is that while the 200 million euro trident is stepping all over each other, the actual bright spots this season, like the moments where the team looked fluid and dangerous, are coming from the kids.
It is a striking and deeply ironic contrast. Look at Arda Güler, the young Turkish wonder kid. He was one of the few consistent bright spots of the entire miserable 2025-2026 season.
He's so much fun to watch.
He really is. He scored twice in that Champions League quarterfinal against Bayern Munich. Why? Because when he plays on the right wing, he actually maintains the team's shape.
Huh.
And then you have Gonzalo Garcia, an academy product of homegrown talent. He stepped in and scored a hat-trick against Real Betis in January.
So you have Güler scoring braces against European giants in the Champions League, Garcia scoring hat-tricks in La Liga, but you can't build the team around them or integrate them fully because the board has mandated that the untouchable trident must play every important minute.
The emergence of players like Garcia proves that the managers know how to set up a functioning football team. It gives the manager a genuine, young, tactically disciplined option to balance the attack. But if the mandate from the president's office says Mbappé, Vini, and Bellingham must start, the manager's hands are tied.
Yeah, there's no flexibility.
The youth are performing because they follow the tactical instructions, but the overall structure is entirely captive to the superstars who refuse to adapt.
Which brings us to the most critical juncture of this deep dive. This impossible puzzle, a locker room of entitled stars, a mandate you can't break, and a history of managers getting fired in under a year, is exactly why the list of men willing and allowed to take this job is so remarkably short. You are stepping into a dressing room where the players know they have more power than you do.
It requires a very specific, perhaps slightly masochistic, psychological profile to even accept an interview for this role right now. I mean, who on earth do you hire to solve a structural crisis of this magnitude?
According to the reporting from David Ornstein and Mario Cortegana at The Athletic, who are basically the gold standard for transfer news, the confirmed shortlist consists of 4 main names: Jürgen Klopp, Mauricio Pochettino, Didier Deschamps, and Zinedine Zidane hovering as a sort of emergency wildcard.
The usual suspects.
Right. But the noise right now, the sheer volume of rumors, is entirely focused on a 2-horse race between Klopp and a man who wasn't even on that original 4-man list, but who has forcefully inserted himself into the conversation, José Mourinho.
The contrast between the Klopp and Mourinho camps in the media is absolutely fascinating. It is a full-blown war of conflicting reports, leaks, and shadow diplomacy. Let's look at the Jürgen Klopp situation first, because it is incredibly complex. Klopp, of course, left Liverpool citing deep emotional and physical exhaustion, saying he was running out of energy to manage day-to-day club football. In January 2025, he signed a very lucrative 4-year deal to become the global football head for Red Bull.
Which, let's be honest, is a nice, comfortable, low-stress executive job. He gets to fly around, consult on high-level strategy for Leipzig and Salzburg, and doesn't have to deal with the daily grind of press conferences and player egos.
Precisely. It is a strategic role, not a frontline managerial one. And multiple Spanish outlets, including Defensa Central, were reporting that because of this, the Klopp option for Real Madrid is fading with each passing day. Their sources say Klopp has zero intention of returning to the chaotic world of club management right now.
He wants his peace and quiet.
Yeah. His long-term career plan is reportedly to bide his time, enjoy the Red Bull role, and eventually take over the German national team. Furthermore, Fabrizio Romano has stated unequivocally that Klopp is only a candidate if he actively puts himself back on the market, which Real Madrid is not going to push him to do while he has an active, binding contract with Red Bull.
Okay, that sounds incredibly definitive. If Romano says he's happy at Red Bull, you assume Klopp is out, but wait.
But wait, because the Spanish media ecosystem thrives on contradiction. Spanish journalist Josep Pedrerol, who has notoriously close ties to the Real Madrid boardroom, has come out with a completely contradictory bombshell report. Pedrerol insists that Jürgen Klopp will be the next Real Madrid coach.
And his reasoning for this involves a plot twist I did not see coming.
It involves Toni Kroos,
Wow.
the legendary German midfielder who recently retired from Real Madrid. According to Pedrerol, and backed up by corroborating reports from Football 365, Toni Kroos has returned to Valdebebas. Valdebebas is Real Madrid's state-of-the-art training complex, essentially the nerve center of the club.
So a retired player is just casually walking back into the facility to hang out?
Not casually. The report states Kroos has returned specifically to act as a shadow diplomat. He is serving as a link between the fractured dressing room and the panicked board of directors.
Oh, that's wild.
Kroos is universally respected by the current players and the management. And Kroos reportedly believes, fundamentally, that his countryman Jürgen Klopp is the only manager with the aura and tactical acumen to fix this specific crisis. Pedrerol claims Kroos's daily involvement is heavily tipping the scales in Klopp's favor, convincing the board to make a massive financial push to buy him out of his Red Bull contract.
That is unprecedented corporate maneuvering. You have a recently retired employee stepping back into the building, acting as an unofficial recruiter to poach a manager who is currently working for an energy drink conglomerate. And let's not gloss over the unbelievable cinematic irony here, if Klopp actually does take the job.
What's fascinating here is the historical context. Jürgen Klopp built his entire managerial identity as the anti-establishment figure. He famously eliminated Real Madrid in the Champions League during his Borussia Dortmund days, playing heavy metal football against their Galacticos.
Right.
And more notably, he fought massive, bitter Champions League battles against Real Madrid while at Liverpool, including winning the final in 2018. The idea of Jürgen Klopp, the ultimate fiery, emotional, underdog mentality manager, taking over the ultimate establishment, elitist Galactico club, it would be one of the most ironic and highly scrutinized appointments in the history of the sport.
It's like a career-long rebel deciding to take over the evil empire. But while the Klopp rumors are swirling in the background, fueled by Toni Kroos, there is a much louder, much more aggressive drumbeat for another candidate, a man who already knows where all the bodies are buried in Madrid, José Mourinho.
The Mourinho narrative is incredibly potent, and he knows exactly how to play the media game to amplify it. He is currently managing Benfica in Portugal, and while he has publicly played coy, he gave a very deliberate quote to the press saying, "No one from Real Madrid spoke with me, I can guarantee that." Sources across the board confirm his deep desire to return is widely known within the corridors of the Bernabeu.
Yeah, he's basically campaigning for it without campaigning for it.
Fabrizio Romano flat out reported that Mourinho is, quote, ready to go to Real Madrid. He would pack his bags tomorrow.
And he has the ultimate trump card in his back pocket. He has the backing of the big boss.
Yes. Multiple reports indicate that President Florentino Pérez is personally spearheading the push for a Mourinho return.
Let's contextualize this for a second. Mourinho managed Real Madrid from 2010 to 2013. He won La Liga with a record points tally, breaking Barcelona's dominance. He was incredibly successful on paper.
Very successful.
But he also left behind a scorched earth locker room. He warred with the media, he warred with his own captain, Iker Casillas, and the atmosphere was incredibly toxic by the time he left. The fact that Pérez wants him back after over a decade, knowing the chaos he brings, is incredibly telling about how desperate the president is.
Desperate times call for abrasive measures, and Mourinho himself has unfinished business. The dossier notes a widely quoted interview where Mourinho admitted that his biggest career regret, his one true misstep, was saying no to Florentino Pérez when asked to stay, and instead returning to Chelsea in 2013.
He regrets it.
He feels he left the dynasty on the table. He wants to reverse that regret and prove he can still manage at the absolute apex of the sport.
But there is a massive financial hurdle standing in the way, right? Because nothing is ever simple with Mourinho.
A significant financial and political hurdle. Mourinho has a €6 million exit clause in his contract at Benfica. Now, for a club like Real Madrid, €6 million is pocket change.
Oh yeah, they spend that on a backup goalkeeper.
But Real Madrid has a very strict, historically stated club policy. They do not pay release clauses for coaches. They view it as beneath them. They expect the coach to use their own leverage to negotiate their own exit for free, proving their desire to join Madrid. So we have a standoff between Pérez's desire for Mourinho, Benfica's demand for the $6 million, and the club's prideful financial policy.
I want to focus on why Pérez wants him, though, because it's not just about nostalgia for the 2012 title run. I was reading a quote in the dossier from Spanish radio journalist Miguel Serrano that really jumped out at me. Serrano explicitly says that Mourinho is the best option for this specific crisis because he has a, quote, mean streak.
A mean streak is a very deliberate surgical choice of words by Serrano.
And if you look at this dressing room, Mbappé blatantly ignoring Alonso on the touchline, Vinícius complaining to the press when he gets subbed off, Arbeloa admitting the players think they can win just by getting off the bus. Maybe a mean streak is exactly what is required.
That might be the only thing that works.
You need a manager whose ego is somehow mathematically larger than a locker room full of Ballon d'Or candidates. Mourinho thrives on conflict. He loves it. He demands absolute tactical discipline and defensive organization, and if you don't provide it, he will humiliate you in the press.
Which is exactly what the Mbappé positional freedom problem requires to be solved. Mourinho would not care about Mbappé's commercial value or how many jerseys he sells in Asia.
Not one bit.
If Mourinho draws a tactical map and says play in the left half space and you drift central, you will sit on the bench. He would rather lose a match his way than win it by letting the players dictate the tactics. However, the dossier also notes that this exact confrontational style is why several powerful members of the Real Madrid boardroom are absolutely terrified of bringing him back.
I bet they are.
They remember the Civil War of 2013. They are worried he will fix the tactics but burn down the institution in the process.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the tactical mess. We've looked at the bloated player egos. We've looked at the managers being chewed up and spit out. I am going to force you into a corner here. Let's play the blame game. Based entirely on the evidence we've discussed in this dossier, who is actually the primary culprit for this disaster season? Is it Xabi Alonso for rigidly sticking to his Leverkusen tactics and refusing to adapt to the reality of his superstars? Is it Kylian Mbappé for stubbornly refusing to adapt his positioning and suffocating the team's geometry? Or is it Florentino Pérez for creating the mess in the first place? You have to pick one.
Well, if I am forced to choose the primary catalyst for this structural collapse, I have to point directly to the presidential suite. It is Florentino Pérez. The dysfunction flows downward from the hiring strategy.
I hear you blaming Pérez, but come on, Pérez isn't the one on the pitch. When Mbappé completely blanks Alonso on the touchline in Saudi Arabia, that's a grown man, a professional athlete, refusing basic professional courtesy. Isn't it a cop-out to blame the guy sitting in the luxury box eating prawns when the player is the one physically sabotaging the tactical plan?
It looks like a cop-out until you deeply analyze the power dynamics of a football club. Why does Mbappé feel empowered to ignore his manager? Because he knows the manager is temporary and his own contract is permanent.
Oh, yeah.
Pérez created an environment where the players are officially classified as untouchable. When the president tells the squad via internal mandates, these three guys play no matter what, he cuts the manager off the knees. The manager's only true leverage to enforce discipline is the threat of the substitute to bench. When Pérez removes that threat, mutiny is mathematically inevitable. Furthermore, look at the specific details regarding Xabi Alonso's appointment. The dossier from ESPN explicitly states that Florentino Pérez was not the primary champion of hiring Alonso in the first place.
Wait, really? The president didn't even want the guy he hired.
No. The Director General, José Angel Sanchez, pushed heavily for Alonso. ESPN reports that Pérez was, quote, concerned about Alonso's relative inexperience and viewed him as a massive gamble.
Yet he signed off on the contract anyway.
Exactly. And that is the definition of poor leadership. He accepted a recommendation he didn't believe in, hired a manager he thought was a risk, handed that manager a fractured tactical puzzle with an untouchable mandate that forbid the manager from making the necessary structural changes to fix it, and then ruthlessly pulled the plug after just 233 days when the gamble he never wanted to take predictably failed. The manager paid the ultimate price for the president's lack of conviction and contradictory roster building.
That perfectly sets up the wider context of Florentino Pérez's reign, because the Xabi Alonso firing isn't an isolated incident. The section of the dossier labeled the Pérez factor is essentially a tour through a managerial graveyard.
It is staggering when you look at the historical data. During his time as president, across his various tenures, Florentino Pérez has sacked 10 different managers.
10!
Whoever takes this job next, whether it's Mourinho, Klopp, or Zidane coming back for a third time, will be his 11th hire.
10 managers sacked. That level of turnover is dizzying.
And the lifespan of these managers is incredibly short. The average tenure of a Real Madrid manager under Pérez is approximately 1.5 years, 18 months. To put that in perspective, the dossier compares it to legendary organizational stability in the Premier League. Arsene Wenger was given the time to build a culture at Arsenal for 22 years. Sir Alex Ferguson was at Manchester United for 27 years, constantly rebuilding squads. At Real Madrid under Pérez, you get 18 months to win the Champions League, or you are out. Even Carlo Ancelotti's highly successful second spell only lasted 4 years, which makes him an extreme statistical outlier.
It really makes you wonder, who is the true manager of Real Madrid? Is it the guy standing on the touchline in the tracksuit trying to figure out how to fit Mbappé and Vini on the same flank? Or is it the guy in the bespoke suit in the presidential suite?
That is the exact debate at the heart of modern football governance. The pattern under Pérez is remarkably consistent. A new manager arrives, there's a brief honeymoon period, a tactical disconnect inevitably emerges with these superstar players because the squad is built for marketing rather than balance.
Right.
The players complain, the president sides with the commercial value of the stars over the authority of the coach, and the manager exits. If the players know that the president will ultimately fire the coach rather than bench a €200 million asset, their coach has zero actual authority from day one. He is just a very well-paid substitute teacher.
Which means any incoming manager, even someone as abrasive as Mourinho, is already fighting a losing battle against the club's own internal culture. But wait, because whoever takes this impossible, high-pressure, politically toxic job has another massive, immovable hurdle coming right at them. And it has absolutely nothing to do with European club football.
Yes, the geopolitical weight of the 2026 World Cup.
The World Cup is being hosted in North America, spread across the USA, Canada, and Mexico. It kicks off on June 11th, 2026. And this global tournament is quietly dictating Real Madrid's entire hiring timeline and strategy.
According to deep dive reports from Tribuna and The Athletic, Real Madrid has established a strict, non-negotiable internal deadline. They want the new manager fully in place, contract signed and announced before the World Cup begins on June 11th.
Wow.
They want the instability resolved before the globe's attention shifts to North America.
Which creates an immediate scheduling handicap for half the men on their shortlist.
Exactly. Look at Mauricio Pochettino and Didier Deschamps. Pochettino is currently managing the United States men's national team, who are co-hosting the tournament. Deschamps is managing France, one of the heavy favorites to win it. Both of these men are going to be intensely occupied with the World Cup until at least mid-July.
So they can't do anything for the club.
Right. Deschamps has already announced he will leave the French job after the tournament, and Pochettino's contract could theoretically allow him to leave, meaning both will be free agents. But they're completely unavailable to do club business in June.
So if Real Madrid stubbornly sticks to their June 11 deadline, they are effectively eliminating Pochettino and Deschamps purely on scheduling grounds, which funnels them right back to Mourinho, Klopp, or the wildcard, Zidane, who are all currently unattached to national teams. It artificially shrinks their candidate pool.
But the World Cup problem goes much deeper than just the administrative hiring schedule. It creates a logistical and psychological nightmare scenario for whoever does take the job.
Walk me through it. Let's imagine a scenario. Let's say Mourinho's release clause is paid, and he signs the contract on June 1st. What does his summer actually look like?
If Mourinho takes the job on June 1st, he will spend June and July sitting in an air-conditioned office in Madrid, staring at a whiteboard.
Sounds thrilling.
He will be trying to plan preseason training camps, trying to orchestrate a complex transfer strategy, and trying to map out a tactical system to fix the Mbappé, Vinícius, Bellingham triangle. Meanwhile, his three most important, untouchable players, Kylian Mbappé for France, Vinícius Jr. for Brazil, and Jude Bellingham for England, are thousands of miles away, competing in different time zones on the world's biggest stage.
He has zero physical access to them. He can't run drills. He can't pull them into his office for private sit-downs to sort out their egos. He can't test out on the training pitch if Mbappé works better slightly tucked in behind Bellingham. Nothing. He just has to watch them on TV like the rest of us and hope they don't get injured.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the new manager is entirely at the mercy of the World Cup's emotional, physical, and psychological toll. Consider the potential outcomes. Mbappé is leading France as the defending finalists, and he is the top favorite for the Golden Boot, the award for the tournament's top scorer.
Sure.
The dossier notes he had a nagging knee issue earlier in the season, though he appears fit now. What if he aggravates that knee in a quarterfinal in Miami? Or, conversely, what if he wins the Golden Boot, lifts the World Cup, and his ego inflates even further?
Oh man, I can hear the press conferences now. I just won the World Cup as the top scorer. I'm not tracking back to defend the left flank for a club manager.
Precisely. Or look at Bellingham. He's an England captain candidate, anchoring their midfield alongside Declan Rice. If Bellingham leads England to their first World Cup glory since 1966, his market value and internal leverage at Madrid become astronomical. He will demand to play exactly where he wants.
And if they fail?
Conversely, if they fail spectacularly, if they are knocked out in the group stage, the manager inherits players who are physically exhausted and psychologically broken. The new manager inherits whatever emotional state the tournament leaves them in right before the grueling club season begins. You have to pick up the pieces of whatever happens in North America.
And we haven't even touched on the most poetic, ridiculous subplot of this entire World Cup collision course. Let's talk about Brazil, because the narrative loop here is almost too perfect for a sports script.
The Ancelotti dynamic. It is the ghost that refuses to leave the machine.
You literally could not script this better. The legend that Real Madrid let go by mutual consent back in May 2025 to start this entire year of chaos. Carlo Ancelotti. Who is he managing right now? The Brazilian national team.
The narrative circle is perfectly closed. Let's trace the dominoes.
Please do.
Ancelotti coached Real Madrid, who signed Xabi Alonso's targets from Leverkusen. Ancelotti's departure created the managerial vacancy that Alonso filled. Alonso substituted Vinícius Jr., sparking a massive public fallout that directly contributed to Alonso getting sacked. And now Ancelotti is the manager of Brazil, where his primary tactical task this summer will be coaching Vinícius Jr. at the World Cup.
The manager Real Madrid ditched because they wanted a modern tactician is now tasked with unlocking the exact superstar whose complaints helped get his modern replacement fired.
And this is vital because Vinícius's record for Brazil has historically been incredibly modest. 8 goals in 47 appearances going into 2026. He has never replicated his club form for his country, but Ancelotti has a historically excellent paternal relationship with Vinícius.
He always gets the best out of him.
Vinícius has spoken publicly about his desperate desire to win the Ballon d'Or and a World Cup to solidify his legacy. If Ancelotti succeeds where Alonso and Arbeloa failed, if Ancelotti puts an arm around Vinícius, gives him tactical freedom, and turns him into a dominant, unstoppable force at the World Cup,
It just highlights how unbelievably badly Real Madrid mismanaged the transition. It makes Perez look even worse if Ancelotti gets Vinícius firing on all cylinders in July, winning Man of the Match awards, while Madrid's carousel of 3 managers couldn't figure out how to use him all year.
it is the ultimate irony. The ghost of Ancelotti's man management is still haunting Madrid's rigid, chaotic managerial decisions. The entire footballing world will be watching to see if the old master can solve the puzzle that broke the club that fired him.
So what does this all mean? We have gone down an incredible rabbit hole today. We have looked at a footballing institution that prides itself on regal supremacy, a club that demands perfection, that went from Ancelotti to Alonso to Arbeloa in 12 utterly chaotic months.
A total mess.
They are facing a back-to-back trophy drought. They are locked in a tactical prison with a €200 million puzzle involving Mbappé, Vinícius, and Bellingham that they refuse to break up because of marketing mandates. And now they are racing against the clock of a North American World Cup to hire either José Mourinho, who wants to settle an old score and burn down the egos, or Jürgen Klopp, who might be being secretly recruited by Toni Kroos acting as a shadow diplomat.
It is a phenomenal cautionary case study.
Yeah.
And the reason this matters, the definitive takeaway, even if you are not a diehard football fan, is that the Xabi Alonso firing proves a fundamental law of corporate and sporting governance. In modern mega organizations, systemic culture will always eat tactical brilliance for breakfast.
Right. Culture is everything.
It shows exactly what happens when an organization hoards top-tier assets without a cohesive structural plan or a clear hierarchy of authority. When the commercial value of the individual supersedes the systemic function of the team, the result isn't dominance. The result is absolute, predictable, and highly publicized organizational chaos.
It is the difference between an expensive collection of great players and a great team. And as we wrap up this massive deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, provocative thought to mull over. We've talked about the fragile egos, the looming World Cup, and the dark shadow of José Mourinho returning to Madrid. Imagine this highly plausible scenario. It is mid-July 2026. The World Cup is deep into the knockout stages. France plays Brazil. The tension is unbelievable. And in the 90th minute, Kylian Mbappé scores the winner, eliminating Vinícius Jr. from the tournament on the world stage, ending his dream.
Oh, wow.
A week later, the dust settles. Those 2 men have to fly back to Spain, walk into the exact same Real Madrid locker room, look each other in the eye, and take tactical orders from a newly hired, incredibly demanding José Mourinho who doesn't care about either of their feelings. Given everything we've learned today about this incredibly fragile, toxic ecosystem, how long until the cycle of chaos just starts all over again?
Probably not very long at all.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an absolutely wild ride unpacking this dossier with you. Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking for the underlying mechanics behind the headlines, and we will catch you on the next one.